Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Macawiis Mondays. This is episode 3 with me, your host Sam, and today we're going to talk about prepositions in Somali. In the previous lesson, I complained a little bit about how prepositions in Somali are a little bit funky. They really come of two types. They come as ones that are kind of connected to possessives, right? Like hortisa, what we're really saying is it's outside. Right, and there's a list of these, I don't know, maybe 10 or something, and you say isa or eda on the end of them most of the time to say like it's outside and things like that, okay? But there's another way with pre-verbal prepositions, right? So like we'll put a preposition before a verb, and some verbs inherently need them, right? Like there are some verbs in Somali, like ku hadal, which means to speak, but you don't say after Somaliga wan hadlaya. You need to say wan ku hadlaya. Right, I'm speaking Somali. You need to use ku before it. Say ku hadlaya, right? I guess it's a bit like saying we're speaking in Somali. You know, sometimes we might say something like that in English, perhaps. But what I want to talk about today is preposition and pronoun clusters. So let me take a second just to make sure that it's clear what I mean by that, because that's kind of abstract to most of us who haven't studied grammar in our own language, maybe. So those of you who have studied Arabic might already be familiar with this idea to a degree, right? Where prepositions and pronouns together to say things like with me, about you, for her, with him. Even in Arabic, those come with some sound changes which are quite challenging to certainly to my students on my Arabic program. When they get to step 13, when we do those kinds of clusters, they're not always intuitive. Like as an example in Arabic, with the preposition le, meaning to or for, if you're to have hu on the end, which means him, if you're going to say for him, we don't say lihu, we say lehu, right? There's a little bit of a sound change, and the sound changes in Arabic are always really just to do with ease of pronunciation. And Somali is exactly the same, right? Sometimes in Somali, you might have two kus together, you might have kuku, but Somali doesn't say kuku, it's a bit harder to say kuku, they say kugu. The second ka turns into a g, and these kind of sound, these times when sounds kind of get blended into something easier on the tongue, this is very natural in language, right? But what I want to do is I want to go over 4 preposition-pronoun clusters that are really useful today. There's like 50 of them, okay? And I'll recommend a book actually. The book Liban Ahmed's Somali Grammar Revision. This has all of them laid out. There's a whole chapter on these. Further to this, it's nearer the back of the book, but there's a entire few pages on preposition clusters. Like, you know, from page 82, 83, 84, 85, there's like 4 pages of them and there's like 50, but I would like to go through 4 really important ones today. So let's get into it. So the first example, if you want to say for me or to me, right, the pronoun for me is e, right? You might say idib, give me, or ec, give to me, right? But if you want to say give for me or bring something for me, we need, not only do we need the pronoun e, meaning me, we need the for, which is u in Somali. So you have like an ui together, and Somali, that doesn't sound very Somali to say ui can, bring it for me, right? Ui can. So what Somali does is rather than having ui, it will change the sound to just a longer e. You'll have 2 i's written next to each other, okay? You'll say e can sahan, for example, like bring a sahan for me. Okay, a sahan is a plate, by the way, okay? So bring a plate for me. E can sahan, right? You'll have 2 e's together. And it doesn't just mean you're saying bring me a sahan, right? You're saying bring it for me, because you're including the preposition u, meaning for, into the 2 e's together. So e can sahan, rather than like ui can sahan. So in the second example, we're going to talk about using a different preposition with e. With all of these examples, it's going to be about me, for me, to me, with me, and things like that. But in this second example, we're doing at, in, or by me. And that preposition in Somali is ku. So we need like an e and a ku. Somali doesn't say iku, okay? Just over time, it's natural that ka becomes a g. It just is an easier sound to flow out, right? So you say igu. So for example, I could say something like Miad igu aragtay masajid kashalayto. Did you see me in the masjid yesterday? Did you see me in the mosque yesterday? So the reason why you need both of them is because you're saying, not only are you saying me, but you're saying in. You're saying me and in as well, and you need both of those before the verb. Right, so that's why we say miad igu aragtay masajid kashalayto. Obviously the aragtay is from the verb arag, meaning to see, right? So yeah, so we're saying, you know, miad, did you, igu, me in, aragtay, the see, masajid ka, the mosque, shalayto, yesterday. right? So that is a word order which we're really unfamiliar with in English, but it takes a lot of practice, and I'm still, quite honestly, I'm practicing it. I really struggle to use these in my Somali, so that's a big part of why I'm doing this Macawiis Monday, to practice it a little bit more with you guys. So the next preposition that we're going to add to E as well, rather than the previous ones that we've done, which were like for me, and then we did in and me, and then in the next one we're doing ka, which is from or about me. I'm going to give you the example in Somali for a sentence that means he took my passport from me, right? So we need the from, which is the preposition ka, and we need the me, which is the pronoun e. And when we put these together, we don't say ika, just like previously we didn't say iku, we said igu. So we say iga instead of ika. So the Somali example would be basa borki, the passport, bu iga qatay. Bu, referring to the person who took my passport. Iga, meaning from me. The passport, he, from me. Qatay, he took, right? Basa burki bu iga qatay. He took my passport from me. And the fourth and final example that we're going to do in this lesson, thankfully, doesn't really have a sound change. It's just for you to be aware that we join them together. So the preposition in Somali, with, is la, okay? So we're going to have an e and a la to say with me, right? We're really saying me with. It's important to understand that bit, that we're kind of swapping the order a little bit in Somali. So really saying, so this is the way of saying with me, but in Somali we're going to be saying me with. So we're going to be saying ila. We're not going to be saying lai. We're saying ila, okay? So the example that I wanted to give you is to say, they sat with me, okay? They sat with me, right? So we're going to have way ila fadisten. Way, because way is kind of this, what you call it, mood classifier in Somali, to say that we're talking about a group of them in the third person, right? Way, them, ila, with me, fadisten. They sat with me. Fadisten is how we conjugate it into, into the plural in the third person, right? Because they're the ones sitting. Ila, way ila fadisten. They sat with me. Just a little note, just before we close. Like this fadisten, there's different ways of spelling that. Typically, from my experience, typically Somalis who are Konfor, who are from the south, they prefer faristen with an R in there, faristen. And typically Somalis who are Waqoi, who are from the north, Reer Waqoi, they tend to prefer fardisten with a d sound that perhaps I'm not even exactly correct in pronouncing it, because it's a challenging sound for Somali, in Somali for English speakers like me, for bumbling Nina'adans like me. So that's everything for this video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, and you know anybody else who's kind of getting to this level in Somali, where they are kind of ready to start practicing more preposition and pronoun clusters, and that will be a level up in their language, as it is in my case, then please share this with them as well. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well, because that's an enormous help. See you next Monday for another Macawiis Mondays. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.